and again I am welcoming to you all to this class. So, dear students, we are discussing about the intestine in our last class, and we have already discussed about the intestine of amphibians, okay, because this is again the anatomical class, that means anatomy class, and we are discussing about the anatomical features of different organs of different vertebrates, specially we are focusing on tetrapods. Okay. So, now we shall start with the intestine of reptile. So, this is the intestine of reptile. As in other cases, for example amphibia, this reptile also has a well defined intestine, but this is more complex in comparison to the amphibian. So, what happens, for example this is the pyloric stomach part, for example this is the pyloric stomach, then this pyloric stomach opens to, so this is the pyloric part, so this is the stomach and this the last part of the stomach, that is the pyloric stomach. Second part of the stomach is known as pyloric stomach. Generally pyloric stomach opens to the intestine, we know. So, in case of reptile, through a pyloric sphincter, one sphincter is there. So, if this is the pyloric stomach, so this is the stomach and one sphincter is there, this is the sphincter, and this sphincter is known as pyloric sphincter. Okay. So, through the pyloric sphincter, stomach leads into the small intestine. Okay. Again this is the small intestine, the anterior part of which forms, so this is the intestine. So, the anterior part of this one forms the U-shaped structure. So, you just imagine, so this is the U-shaped structure. So, the anterior part of which forms U bend or U-shaped structure with that of the stomach. So, it forms one U with that of the stomach. So, you just see this is the U and this is the stomach. So, this is the U. So, U-shaped bend with the stomach, and this is the duodenum and this part is known as duodenum. So, in case of reptile, so this part is known as duodenum. Okay. So, this is the duodenum. Okay. So, now duodenum, in case of reptile, duodenum receives bile and pancreatic duct. Okay. For example, one gland is there, we shall discuss today about that one. So, this is the liver, one gland, this is one digestive gland. Another structure is there, that is called as pancreas, we shall also discuss about that. This is also pancreas. So, these two, so this is one gland and this is for example another gland. So, these two glands actually opens to the duodenum by their duct. Okay. So, the ducts are there. So, duodenum receives bile and pancreatic duct. Okay. So, duodenum is the actual site for receiving the enzymes and solutions from different digestive gland. This is the site of receiving the fluid from digestive gland. At any circumstance, ileum does not receive. So, duodenum immediately follows to the next part. So, this is the, for example duodenum. So, now this duodenum actually follows to next part. So, this is the next part. So, this duodenum follows to the next part, that is known as ileum. So, in case of reptile, ileum is a short length tube after making a few coils. So, now this will make some coils. So, now for example these are the coils. So, now making some coils, few coils. So, it will coil, few coils lead to one structure that is called as large intestine. So, this part is the large intestine and we know, so this is large intestine because the diameter of this structure or diameter of this canal is larger in comparison to the duodenum. So, the small intestine, it is small intestine because the diameter of that part is narrower, and it is large intestine because the diameter of that structure is generally or to some extent large. So, that this is called as large intestine. So, it is short structure, but having large diameter. Okay. So, ileum is a short length end that is after making some coils leads to large intestine. And in case of reptile, large intestine is differentiated into a thin wall, that is a thin wall, blackish and somewhat bent upon itself sac, that is called as cecum. and a thin walled tubular colon and a rectum. So, what are they? The first one is called as cecum. So, you see, so just after some coil, this will open to structure. So, I am just writing here the first one, a thin walled blackish and to some extent bent, this is called as cecum. So, I am writing here. So, this is the cecum. Now, this will open to and cecum will continue to another structure that is tubular. So, this is tubular. So, this tubular structure is called as colon. This is the colon, and finally, the colon will open to a structure that is called as rectum. So, this is the rectum. So, in case of reptile, the large intestine is divisible into three parts. The first part is known as cecum, the second part is known as colon, and third part is known as rectum. Okay. So, rectum opens to outside. Next, what happens? So, now this rectum in case of reptile, then rectum is the last part. So, cecum and the colon parts of large intestine are not distinctly demarcated. So, in this case cecum and the colon, they are not distinctly demarcated, not separated. Hence, the first part of the intestine, is often called as colic cecum. So, this is also known as colic cecum. This part is known as colic. So, this is known as colic cecum because this part cecum, this part is not well demarcated. Okay, but the that is the large intestine having the rectum part is well differentiated. So, large intestine is largely connected with the or concerned with the function like formation of fecal materials, okay, and absorption of water. So, what the large intestine does? So, large intestine is largely its main function is to form the fecal material. That means during the process of digestion, whatever undigested food material remains inside the alimentary canal, they are pushed into the rectum. So, rectum is practically a field or rectum is practically a structure which actually stores the fecal material. Again, in this fecal material, maximum amount of water is there. So, what happens? Wall of the rectum actually absorb the water, so that the fecal material is gradually become a solid like structure or it is semi solid in nature. So, what is the main function of the rectum? The main function of the rectum is to store the feces, the fecal material. So, this is the fecal material. So, I am writing here this is the feces, that is the fecal material feces, and to absorb water, and then this rectum opens to another structure that is known as cloaca. So, this is the most important part in case of the reptile, that is the cloaca, and the cloaca is the outermost structure of the or last structure of the large intestine where or from which the fecal material will be eliminated out. So, in case of reptile, this cloaca is not simple, to some extent it is complex. In case of reptile, the cloaca is divided into or subdivided into, or cloacal chamber is subdivided into a coprodium for reception of the fecal material and one urodium for the products of kidney and genital organ. So, just I am writing here. So, for example, this is the rectum and this rectum opens to one structure, for example, you see. So, this is the cloacal chamber. Okay. So, this cloacal chamber had two regions. The first region is known as coprodium. So, this is the coprodium. You see here, this is the coprodium. So, what this chamber does? Actually, the undigested food material which is now present in this rectum, they will pass into the coprodium. So, coprodium actually stores the fecal material. So, this is the coprodium. And what happens to the next part, that is known as urodium. So, this is the urodium. So, this is urodium. So, what the urodium does or what is the function of this one? So, to the urodium opens the urinogenital duct. So, this is the opening of the urinogenital duct. So, urine will pass to this chamber and genital material will pass to this chamber. So, the whole chamber, this is the cloacal chamber is concerned with the elimination of the fecal material and elimination of the genital material and the urine. So, this part is concerned with the elimination of what? Urine and the genital material. So, this is the urinogenital part or urinogenital, or this part is concerned with the urinogenital function, and this part is exclusively for or meant for the storing of the fecal material. So, that this is known as cloaca. Okay. So, in case of reptile this actually happens. So, now nextly you see, so in case of reptile again this part having the urodium, and that is the what in case of the reptile urodium, and in case of them this main part is the coprodium, you see. So, two chambers open to the outside by common aperture or common chamber, that is known as the most important part. So, this part, so you see, so this is the part. So, this chamber opens to the out chamber or outer one by a chamber that is known as proctodium. So, this is the proctodium. So, what I am telling, so in case of reptile the cloaca is 3 chambered. So, from this it is concluded that the cloaca is 3 chambered. The first chamber is the coprodium, second chamber is urodium, and third chamber is proctodium. Okay. So, 2 chambers, that is the coprodium and urodium, opens to the final chamber that is known as proctodium, and this proctodium opens to outside by one aperture that is known as cloaca. So, what is the fundamental rule? So, in case of reptile the rectum enters to or rectum follows to one chamber that is known as cloacal chamber, and cloacal chamber is divisible into 3 parts. The first part is coprodium, second part is urodium, third part is the proctodium, and they open to one, or the proctodium opens to outside by an aperture, that is the cloacal aperture, and this cloacal aperture is actually guarded by one sphincter that is known as cloacal sphincter. So, that sphincter, so sphincter actually regulate the passage of the product of the cloacal chamber. So, this is the most important modification regarding the cloaca in case of reptile. So, specialization of cloaca in case of reptile, specialization of cloaca into chambers meant for. So, why this happens? Because in case of reptile, or we know reptiles are completely arboreal, they are not getting sufficient amount of water. Okay. So, because they are evolved from the amphibians and they are the first terrestrial vertebrate. So, due to shortage of water or to conserve water in their body, so maximum part of water is actually absorbed from the fecal material which is now present in this coprodium. So, this type of specialization of cloaca into chambers is meant for reabsorption of water both from the fecal material, both from the feces and urine. Feces and urine both are thus solid. Okay. So, due to this what happens in case of the reptile? In case of reptile, as maximum amount of what water is absorbed from the fecal material and maximum amount of water is absorbed from the urine, so that in both the cases the fecal material and urine both are solid. Very interesting thing. Okay. So, you have observed, for example, you have seen the fecal material of Hemidactylus, or that is known as wall lizard. So, whenever wall lizard defecate, at that time you have seen that, so there is a drop of fecal material having very semi solid like structure. So, this is the combination of what? Urine and the fecal material. Okay. So, this is the mechanism to conserve water or maximum water in case of reptile. So, this is the type of what? The modification of the large intestine in case of reptile. So, now you come to the next vertebrate, that is the most important vertebrate, that is known as bird. So, in case of bird again this intestine is to some extent modified one, because this is completely aerial. Okay. So, though in case of bird or through a pylorus gizzard, we know that is a gizzard present in case of bird, through a pylorus. So, now this is the intestine. So, this is the intestine of bird. Okay. Intestine of bird, and in the last class we were discussing about a structure present in bird that was known as gizzard. Okay. So, through a pylorus gizzard, the intestine starts. That means through a pylorus gizzard leads into the small intestine, and this small intestine is differentiated into a U-shaped duodenum again and a long coiled uniformly thick, that is called as ileum. So, in case of bird, again this is duodenum and ileum. Okay, two parts are there, duodenum and ileum. That means the intestine in case of bird. So, use this C. So, in case of bird, the intestine is again divisible into two parts. The first part is known as duodenum and second part is known as ileum. Two parts are there. Okay, ileum. So, there are two bile ducts in case of bird, two bile ducts, and what are they? Bile ducts are the ducts which are coming from the gallbladder, and this gallbladder is present in one gland, that is known as liver. So, there are two bile ducts, the left duct opening into the descending limb of the duodenum close to the pylorus, and thinner right duct open into the ascending limb of the duodenum. So, if this is the duodenum issue, you see, so if this is the duodenum in case of bird, so this is a coiled one, so this is the descending part and this is the ascending part of the duodenum, and this is the pyloric stomach. So, this is the path. So, this is the pathway. So, this is the stomach and this stomach leads to the duodenum. So, in the duodenum, this is the descending part and this is the ascending part. So, in case of bird, there are two bile ducts, they actually carry bile, and one is left, that is opening into the descending one. So, this one, this for example, this is the left, this is the descending one. So, this bile duct is opening to this region and another bile duct opening to this region. So, two bile ducts are there. So, in case of bird, the two bile ducts open differently, one into the descending limb of the duodenum close to the stomach or pylorus, and the thinner right duct opens into the ascending limb of the ascending limb of the duodenum. The large intestine in case of bird, the large intestine is short and its separation from the small intestine is marked by a pair of cica, that is known as colic cica. What is the name of that one? That is known as colic cica. So, this is the, for example, you see this is the large intestine. So, this is the cica, this is the structure which is known as colic cica. So, this is colic cica. So, this is one structure. So, in case of bird, large intestine is short, this is short, and its separation from the small intestine is marked by a structure that is known as colic cica. Colic, I have written here, that is colic cica. Okay. So, now in some birds such as ducks, our duck, common duck, the colic cica are very large size and also bear villi. So, this is all about the colic cica or all about the structure of the what? The small intestine of bird. So, then the large intestine again what? Leads to the structure that is known as cloaca, because just like reptile, this also has the cloaca. So, in case of bird, the cloaca, for example, I am taking the example of the pigeon. So, in case of pigeon or other birds, the cloaca is divided into again three chambers, because we have already studied about the chambers. We know these chambers were first developed in case of reptile, and the chambers are the coprodium. The first one is coprodium, and we know coprodium, what coprodium does. Coprodium receives the fecal material from the rectum. Similar to that of the reptile, this bird has the next chamber, that is known as urodium. So, what the urodium does? The urodium receiving the genital duct and the proctodium leading to the outside. Just like reptile, these birds have also three sub chambers of the cloaca. The first one is the coprodium receiving the fecal material, second one is the urodium receiving the genital and urinary duct, and the proctodium which actually leads to the outside through the cloacal aperture guarded by the cloacal sphincter. And in case of bird, especially in young bird, you just remember the very important point it is in relation to the immunology. So, in young pigeon or young bird, there is a small blind sac with much lymphoid tissue, lymphoid tissue, and opening into the proctodium at its roof, and it is known as bursa fabrici. This is known as bursa. So this is most important, you should remember this one. So this is known as bursa fabrici. So fabrici. So what is this? I am again telling. So in case of young pigeon, in case of young pigeon or in case of young bird, what happens? There is a small blind sac with much lymphoid tissue and opening into the proctodium. This also opens to the proctodium at its roof. This opens at the roof of the proctodium, and it is known as bursa fabrici. It is known as bursa fabrici, and this contains lymphoid tissue. This is one endodermal derivative. And mostly these are synthesizing the B cells. Okay. So B cells, we know B cells are involved, or B cells are associated with our immune system. So in case of bird, these B cells are produced from the bursa fabrici that is present at the proctodium region or the roof of the proctodium. Okay. So this is all about the cloacal structure of the bird. So now I want to show you a picture regarding the chamber. You see, this is, for example, you see, this is the cloacal region and this is the coprodium. Actually this is the coprodium which is receiving the opening of the rectum. So this is the picture. So this is the coprodium. So now this chamber is urodium and this chamber is proctodium. So you know, this is copro, this is uro, and this is proctodium. Three chambers, they are present in the cloaca. So now you see, this is the structure of a bird. So this is the kidney and this is the ureter. So kidney actually produces urine, ureter having that is passing to the ureter, and this ureter opens to this region. Okay. So this is the just one structure to show you the different chambers of the cloaca in case of bird. So now come to the next part, and that is the intestine of mammal. So this is most developed, because this is a part, or this is a structure which are generally present with us. There is a mammal is most highly or most developed group among the tetrapod, and this intestine is most developed in case of the mammal. So now we shall start to study the intestine of mammal or intestine in mammal. Okay. So mammal having also the intestine that is divisible into small intestine and large intestine, and small intestine starts from the stomach. That means in case of mammal also the stomach leads to coiled intestine. So in case of mammal, this is much coiled intestine differentiated into a small and large intestine. Again, between these two, so if this is large and small, so between the two lies a blind diverticulum that is called cecum. So you just see, for example, this is the large intestine. Okay, this is the large intestine. So now this is the so you see, this is the small intestine. So in case of mammal, for example, this is the small intestine, and this small intestine follows to the large intestine. You see, this is the large one. So this is the large intestine. So in case of mammal, what happens between the two, that means between the large and small intestine, there is present a blind sac. For example, this is a blind sac. Okay, so this is a blind sac. So presence of a blind sac, that means this bag is not opening to the outside. This is the blind sac, and this blind sac is actually known as cecum. So in case of mammal, what happens between the two parts of the intestine, that is small intestine and large intestine, there is present one structure that is known as blind sac, and that is known as also blind diverticulum, and this is called as cecum. So cecum demarcates the junction of small intestine and large intestine. And in case of mammal, small intestine is again divisible into three regions. But we have known that in case of other vertebrates, this intestine is divisible into only two parts, the duodenum and ileum. But in case of mammal, the intestine or small intestine is divisible into three regions as duodenum, jejunum and ileum. So I am writing here the small intestine. So if this is the small intestine, so in case of mammal, the small intestine is divisible into three parts. The first part is known as duodenum, second part is known as jejunum, jeju. So this is known as jejunum, and third part is known as ileum. So this is the ileum. So three parts are there in case of mammal. So proximal limb, the proximal limb, that means if I again consider the length of this one, so duodenum makes a U-turn, that means U curve with that of the stomach, and this duodenum is actually measure about 25 centimeter in case of men. Again I am telling, so duodenum makes a U curve, it is folded, it is folded upon itself making one U like turn, and this measures about 20 centimeter. I am not telling about other mammal, I am telling exclusively of our case. In case of human or in case of men, this duodenum is of 25 centimeter, okay, long in case of men. So proximal limb of the duodenum, in case of duodenum again, as it is making one U-turn or U shape, so proximal limb of the duodenum receives a single bile duct, whereas distal limb receives pancreatic duct. Again, so if this is the duodenum, you see this is the duodenum, so this is for example 20 centimeter long, and this part is for example proximal, and this part is what, the distal, this part is receiving the duct of bile, and this part is receiving the duct of pancreas. Two important glands are there. So proximal limb, so this part, so proximal limb of the duodenum receives a single bile duct, while the distal receives pancreatic duct. In men, if I consider the case of men, in men the bile duct and the pancreatic duct enter the duodenum together through one structure that is known as papilla of Vater. One structure is there in men, the bile duct and the pancreatic duct are common, this becomes a common duct. So what I am telling, in case of mammal, the bile duct and the pancreatic duct become a common duct, and in men the bile duct and the pancreatic duct enters to the duodenum togetherly. It is a common duct by one structure, through a structure that is known as papilla of Vater. The entrance is regulated by a sphincter that is known as sphincter of OD. So what happens? So this is the structure in case of general mammal. So if I consider the case of what, men, so then what happens in case of men? For example, this is the duodenal part. So this is the duodenal part. So this duodenum has one structure. This is the structure, and this structure is known as papilla of Vater. So this is papilla of Vater. So now to the papilla of Vater opens the common duct. That means this is the bile duct, and this is the what, hepatic duct. So this is the bile duct and this is the pancreatic duct, and this duct become the common hepato-pancreatic duct. So hepato-pancreatic duct singly opens to the duodenum. So for example, this is the duodenum, and this is the structure in case of the human. So in men, the bile duct and the pancreatic duct enter the duodenum togetherly through papilla of Vater, which is regulated by one structure, one valve that is known as sphincter of OD. In case of human, the jejunum is less coiled, or in case of mammal, the jejunum is less coiled, having thicker end vascular wall, and especially in case of men or in human, this jejunum is 2.4 meter long. So jejunum is very long structure, so 2.4. Then jejunum follows to the next structure that is known as ileum. So in case of human, the ileum is the longest one. So ileum is the longest part, having 3.6 meter in human. The entire small intestine has a permanent circular folds that is known as plica circularis. So this is most important. So the entire plica, so the entire alimentary canal of the human, or the entire small intestine, not alimentary canal, the entire small intestine of the human having permanent circular fold that is called as plica circularis. So this is the circularis. This is the characteristic of mammal, and over the folds of the villi there are present the mucous gland. That means over the folds of the finger, over that folds are finger like villi, arising from mucous layer. So, this is some structures of the small intestine. Let us take a break, then we shall continue detail about this one. Okay. So, let us take a break.